You may not realize it yet, but to an avoidant, you are not just another person in their life. You are their guilty pleasure. And isn't that a strange, intoxicating contradiction? Because on one hand, they keep you at arm's length, dodging closeness, retreating into silence, making you question whether you've imagined the connection entirely. Yet on the other hand, you're the person they come back to, again and again in moments when they feel safe enough to let their mask slip. There's something about you that pierces through their armor. Maybe it's the way you listen without trying to fix. Maybe it's the way your presence feels like home even when they won't step fully inside. Maybe it's the quiet steadiness of your love, the part of you that doesn't demand, that simply is. And in their world of hidden fears and locked doors, that makes you both irresistible and dangerous. Because guilty pleasures are not consumed in the light of day. They are stolen, tucked into shadows, savored in secrecy, then hidden away as if nothing happened. That's how the avoidant treats connection, like it's too indulgent, too exposing, too risky to acknowledge fully. So they allow themselves to taste it only when they believe they can handle it and when the craving gets too strong to ignore. And here's the paradox. The very thing that draws them to you, the warmth, the softness, the safety, also terrifies them. Because if they were to lean into it fully, it would dismantle the walls they've spent a lifetime building. So they turn intimacy into something forbidden. And that makes you forbidden, not because you are wrong for them, but because you are too right. Have you ever felt like you were both the center of their world and a secret they're ashamed to keep? Like you are treasured in the dark but discarded in the daylight? That push-pull dynamic, that dance of closeness and retreat, is not proof that you're not enough. It's proof that you've touched something inside of them they don't know how to manage. So when you wonder why they keep circling back, why they can't quite let you go even as they resist you, understand this. You are not disposable. You are the guilty pleasure they keep trying to quit, but can't. And once you see this clearly, you can start asking the question that changes everything. If I'm their guilty pleasure, what does that make them in my story? The first truth you need to hold close is this. Guilty pleasures are rarely treated with respect. Think about it. Nobody leaves their guilty pleasure on the table in the open for everyone to see. It's hidden, tucked away, consumed in secret. And that's how the avoidant relates to you. They may crave you. They may even obsess about you when you're not there, but they'll often disguise it under detachment, indifference, or distraction. This is why you feel the contradiction so strongly. One day, their words or their touch makes you feel irreplaceable, like you've finally broken through the walls. The next, it's as if you don't exist, as if that same closeness never happened. That whiplash doesn't mean the connection isn't real. It means it terrifies them too much to live within the light. Imagine for a moment the avoidant scrolling through your old texts late at night, rereading conversations they'll never admit mattered to them, or replaying the sound of your laugh, the warmth of your body next to theirs. In the quiet moments when they believe no one can see them wanting, this is the shadow world of an avoidance desire, where they savor you, but in silence where they long for you but won't let themselves claim you. And here's the danger. When you don't understand this dynamic, you can mistake secrecy for intimacy. You can start believing that being wanted in the dark is the same as being chosen in the light. But those two are not the same. Being a guilty pleasure means they want to taste you, not necessarily build with you. It means they let themselves dip into the comfort of your presence, but not rise into the vulnerability of commitment. The shift begins when you recognize this pattern for what it is, not proof of your inadequacy, but proof of their fear. You stop asking, why am I not enough for them to stay? And instead ask, why is my enoughness too much for them to handle? That reversal is power. Because when you see the truth, you stop chasing the role of guilty pleasure and start questioning if you deserve to be hidden at all. And here's where the first crack of light shines through. The very same qualities that make you irresistible in their shadows, the softness, the depth, the safety, are the qualities that will one day refuse to live in secret. And the moment you stop playing small in their game of hide and seek, the dynamic begins to shift, not because they changed, but because you did. The second truth is that the avoidant doesn't just want their guilty pleasure, they need it. Not in the way they would ever confess, but in the way a starving person needs crumbs. Because the truth is, they are starving for connection, and yet they cannot allow themselves to sit at the feast. The avoidant's entire nervous system has been trained to believe that closeness is dangerous, that love is a trap, that being seen too deeply is the same as being vulnerable to pain. So what do? They ration intimacy. They take just enough from you to soothe the ache, but not enough to risk dependency. They dip into your warmth like a hand brushing against fire, close enough to feel it, but never long enough to burn. This is why they keep you on the outskirts of their life while still orbiting yours. You are the comfort they can't replicate elsewhere, the safe place they'll never admit they return to when the silence of their world gets too heavy. And though they might treat you like a secret, they rely on you far more than you realize. Have you ever noticed how they reappear after long absences as though nothing happened? How they test the waters with casual contact, a random message, a breadcrumb that reopens the door. That's not coincidence. That's survival. They need their guilty pleasure to remind themselves they can still feel something, that the wall they built hasn't completely killed their capacity for connection. But here's the sharp edge of this realization. If you don't see it clearly, you can confuse being needed with being chosen. You can mistake their dependence on your presence for a declaration of love. But needing someone in secret is not the same as standing beside them in truth. You are not meant to be someone's hidden medicine administered in small doses whenever they're lonely. You are meant to be fully met, fully seen, fully claimed. And yet, there's power in recognizing this dependency. Because when you finally see that the avoidant needs you more than you need them, something inside you steadies. You stop waiting for scraps. You stop bargaining with invisibility. And you start remembering that guilty pleasures may be addictive, but you are not anyone's secret addiction. You are a whole world waiting to be lived in fully. So here's the real question. Once you understand they need you in ways they cannot admit, what happens when you stop being so easily available to meet that need? If this is landing for you, subscribe. We're just getting started. The third truth is that the moment you stop agreeing to live in the shadows, the avoidant begins to unravel. See, guilty pleasures only work when they're hidden. They only work when you quietly accept the terms, when you don't ask for more, when you allow yourself to be consumed in fragments. But the second you begin to demand the light, everything changes. Because now their guilty pleasure has turned into a mirror. And mirrors are terrifying to someone who has built their entire identity around avoidance. Your voice, your boundaries, your clarity, they reflect back the one thing they've worked their whole life to escape responsibility for their own heart. Think of the first time you asked them directly, "What do you want with me?" or "Why do you disappear?" Watch how quickly the tension rises. Not because you're wrong for asking, but because your questions threaten the very fabric of the hiding place they've built. For the avoidant, being confronted with truth feels like standing under a spotlight naked, exposed, trapped. And in their world, exposure equals danger. So they react. Some retreat into silence. Some lash out with defensiveness. Others suddenly paint you as too much, too needy, too demanding, too intense. But make no mistake, this is not about you being too much. This is about your refusal to remain invisible. And isn't that the paradox? The very thing they're most drawn to, your depth, your capacity for intimacy, your refusal to settle for half love, is the same thing that terrifies them when it asks to be met fully. You were safe as long as you stayed in the role of comfort on demand. But the moment you stepped out of that role, you triggered the wound they've been running from since childhood, the terror of being engulfed, controlled, or abandoned. This is where you must stand firm. because their reaction isn't proof that you're asking for too much. It's proof that your presence is powerful enough to stir what they've buried. And while they may retreat, accuse, or run, what they can't erase is the imprint of someone who refused to play small in their shadows. So the next time they call you too much, let it land differently. Hear it as confirmation that you've touched a nerve they've spent years numbing, and then ask yourself, do I want to shrink back into being their guilty pleasure or rise into being someone's chosen partner? Because when you choose the latter, you stop being their indulgence and start becoming their awakening. The fourth truth is this: no matter how detached they seem, the avoidant fears losing you. They may posture with indifference. They may disappear without warning. They may act as though your presence is optional. But beneath that mask lives a very real terror, the terror of losing their lifeline. Because for the avoidant, you are not just a guilty pleasure. You are the only safe place they've allowed themselves to touch intimacy without fully surrendering to it. You are the proof that connection is possible without completely dismantling their walls. And that makes you irreplaceable in a way they'll never admit. Have you noticed how they keep tabs on you even when they pull away? Maybe through subtle check-ins, watching your stories, circling back with casual contact, or asking mutual friends about you. That's not coincidence. That's control. They're terrified of you moving on because it means losing the one space where they could both hide and be held at the same time. But here's the paradox. The very thing they're most afraid of, losing you, is the thing they push toward every time they retreat. It's like watching someone set fire to their only shelter while secretly praying the flames don't take it down completely. And that's the push-pull cycle you've been caught in. The truth is, avoidants are not afraid of being alone. They're masters of solitude. What they're afraid of is losing the person who sees them deeper than they've ever allowed anyone else to. And when they sense that your patience is running out, when they realize you're no longer content to be a guilty pleasure, that fear spikes. Suddenly, their casual indifference feels shakier. Suddenly, their detachment doesn't hold the same power. And here's where the shift happens for you. Once you see their fear for what it is, you no longer mistake it for true power, because the one who secretly fears losing the connection is not the one holding control. It's you. They may not say it out loud, but their actions give them away. And when you stop feeding into the illusion, you reclaim the leverage that has always been yours. So the question becomes, do you continue to soothe their fear by making yourself endlessly available, or do you let that fear be the very thing that forces them to confront what they've been running from all along? Because the day you stop protecting them from the consequences of losing you is the day they finally face the truth. Guilty pleasures don't last forever. The fifth truth is that your power expands the second you stop being their guilty pleasure. Because guilty pleasures are always consumed in secret. They thrive on your silence, on your willingness to accept half gestures, on your agreement to stay hidden in the background of someone else's life. But the moment you step out of that shadow and claim the fullness of who you are, everything shifts. Here's the part most people don't realize. The avoidant may run from intimacy, but they are magnetized by power. Not domination, not control, but authentic, embodied power. The kind that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't shrink. The kind that says, I know my worth and I won't trade it for crumbs. When you embody that, you flip the script. You're no longer the one anxiously waiting for their next breadcrumb. You're no longer the one soothing their guilt while starving for consistency. Instead, you become the mirror that forces them to see what they stand to lose. And here's the beautiful irony. The very thing they feared, your strength, your clarity, your refusal to settle, becomes the very thing that awakens them. It rattles the cage they've built around themselves. It shows them that intimacy isn't suffocation, it's expansion. And if they can't rise to meet that, they risk losing the one connection that made them feel alive in the first place. But here's where your real empowerment lies. You stop living in reaction to their patterns. You stop dancing to the rhythm of their push and pull. Instead, you choose your own rhythm, one rooted in truth, sovereignty, and self-respect. That's when the guilty pleasure turns into a guilty loss. And trust me, that loss echoes far longer in their heart than they will ever admit. Because avoidants don't forget the one person who refused to stay in the shadows. So let this be your reminder. Every time you choose your own power over their secrecy, you are no longer their guilty pleasure. You are their greatest lesson. The sixth truth is this: guilty pleasures don't stay hidden forever. At some point, they force a reckoning, and for the avoidant, that reckoning comes the moment they realize the person they once consumed in secrecy has stepped fully into their own light without them. This is when the avoidant feels the full sting of consequence, because guilty pleasures are supposed to be safe, secret, accessible, on demand. But when you stop being available to their patterns, when you no longer respond to breadcrumbs, when you choose visibility and truth over silence and shadow, something irreversible happens. They lose their hiding place. For perhaps the first time in their lives, the avoidant is confronted with the reality that intimacy isn't optional, that connection isn't something they can nibble on like candy and then spit out when it feels overwhelming. That love requires choice, presence, and consistency. And if they cannot rise to it, they lose it. And here's the irony. It's only when you've walked away from being their guilty pleasure that they finally see the weight of what they had. Suddenly, the very thing they dismissed becomes the thing they can't stop replaying in their minds. The way you understood them, the way you made them feel seen, the way you offered them a safe place they didn't have to earn. Those things don't vanish. They haunt. But here's where your transformation is complete. By then, you're no longer waiting. You've already outgrown the shadows. You've already chosen to live in the light of your own worth. And whether they come back or not, you are free. Because guilty pleasures may seduce, but they never satisfy, what satisfies is truth. What sustains is being fully met, and what transforms your life is realizing you were never meant to be a secret. You were meant to be someone's home. So let the avoidant wrestle with their wake-up call. Let them carry the echo of what they lost. And you walk forward knowing that every time you choose visibility over secrecy, self-worth over waiting, power over craving, you move closer to the love that was designed for you all along. Because you are not and never were someone's guilty pleasure. You are the gift they couldn't keep hidden forever.